It's a really good type of Chilean Britpop, you could say.
Do you know what I mean?
Due to the current landscape of things, Discovery is the greatest Daft Punk record. And Random Access Memories is overtaking the influence of Discovery, in my opinion.
It's about an instruction manual to have uh, romantic affairs. Urban Hills was a disaster for the Verve under Sonic Evolution. I've known hardcore Deftones fans that didn't know that this project existed. And they should be punished and sent to hell for that. I'm like the classical meme that says, you listen it to this one record once and you say you loved it and never listen to it again.
Again,
I'm guilty of that one.
you are afraid of emo. Kendrick Lamar Unforgotten, yeah, right. Who am I, Drake?
Go.
And let's see, are we live? I guess so. Yes. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. How are you, my
Here we
boy? How are you
go.
feeling?
I'm fine. I can see my camera HP widescreen.
Yeah, everything good on your end?
Everything's fine on my end, yeah.
Okay, excellent. How are you doing with today's hit, my boy?
Oh my god, you wouldn't understand, man. It's 37, 38 degrees Celsius, almost over 100 Fahrenheit, and it's awful. My head is sweaty, everything is so awful. I have my bottle of water just in case, but oh my god, it's so tedious.
Oh man, I can feel you. I can feel you. It's literally the same here, and I can imagine how are you doing because at least I'm from the south. You know, it's usually colder here, and in Santiago it's 10 times worse the heat. I
Yeah,
cannot
it's
even comprehend.
dry.
But well, let's not think about that for a moment. Otherwise, it's gonna be worse for both of us. Uh,
Mm.
Welcome, my boy. And welcome
Yeah.
everybody who might be possibly watching. My name is AlexMC and I'm with my buddy Kenogigogne, Alex and Keno for short. We are here and we are once again premiering this podcast called Music Collective. We have an interesting topic to talk about. We're going to start our first, let's say, not trendy topic of the year. This is episode 3. And what are we going to do today, my boy?
Well, today we're gonna talk about some albums that we think are they don't have the recognition they deserve or are being forgotten. We're talking about albums that might be from popular bands, but where are not relevant actually. You know?
Yeah, when you proposed this topic, because I gotta give you credits, this was your idea, so you ever going to take the first one. This was very interesting because you say forgotten albums or something like that, and I thought, wow, this is really a really good idea, because I took some picks that I started to think albums or artists that are starting to become like lost media, or for some reason they were once relevant and then people just kind of forgot about them. They forgot they exist. So we wanted to bring that up. Before we start, however, I want to add a little bit of publicity. We are now on Instagram. We're going to be posting a little bit there. It's gonna be our shitpost central for now. Just a little bit of, we're going to pull a KFC-S strategy. We're going to share a bit of fun, a little bit of laughter in there, just to, I don't know, make things a little bit lightweight, as we're trying to do here on the stream. We're also thinking to expand a little bit on Twitter. Personally, I don't like Twitter very much, but it's a good
I don't like
networking
that either.
website. No. Just for shitposting central, and possibly networking. But yeah, we want to do that. Hope you check them out. If you wanna watch some lightweight memes over here, over there, follow us. You will check it out. There are going to be links on the description. And yeah, how about we just get into it before the heat melts us both?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay,
Like,
so here we are. We are going to be talking about forgotten albums, as we say. we have a selection of 6 albums each. And we are going to start with the one who came up with the idea first. So I'm gonna give the word to my boy Keno with the first one.
Let's go into it. This is Play by Solar, as you can see right here. This album was released in 1997 by a Chilean band. Let me put it right here so I can cover my face.
Nice.
This album was released in 1997 by a band of Chile. It's called Solar, and the album is called Play. It was very popular, you could say, in 1997, 98, because of a single called Por Costumbre, which was very popular, if I remember correctly. Well, I remember correctly. I was born that year, so I don't remember. But for what I have gathered, it was very popular the year. And let me tell you, it's a really good type of Chilean Britpop, you could say. It's a very enjoyable and pleasant album, and I highly recommend it. It's on Spotify, so you can check it out if you want.
I gotta give you some credit on this because, as another Chilean, this goes well with the title because I had no idea personally, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but I had no idea this album existed. I had no idea this band existed. So it does fit well on the topic we're talking about. To me, well, I don't usually listen to too much Spanish music. I need to be honest about that. However, of course, I'm going to check out the popular bands here. I am aware of Los Prisioneros, Los Tres, La Ley, Lucibel, etc., etc. But this one just, honestly, I never check it out. I don't remember any single one of the songs, but I gave this a first listen. I will say this is a very shoegazy album. Yeah, it's kind of inspired by the British music. Personally, I wouldn't call this Britpop because it doesn't reach into the British pop culture, but it's heavily influenced by that, you know. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, this was neat for me. I checked it out just because to prepare a little bit for this stream. It's a very interesting band. It reminds me a little bit of Ride. But yeah, I think this was a very good listen. As I say, I had no idea this existed before you mentioned it.
Yeah, it's like it was forgotten for the times, you know. It's an album that it lost all the momentum due to the band breaking up in the 2000s, and they are now kind of popping back up because the band regrouped in the 2020s, you know. So yeah, it's a little album that it deserves a little more recognition that it deserves right now, in my opinion. It's highly underrated. I would think that with each listen, it has become a part of my heart, you could say.
Hmm, I, I get it. When was this released? What year exactly?
1997, if I
It
remember
has
correctly.
that. It has that 90s vibe. You know, it's got that.
Yeah,
Try to be experimental. Try to taking a lot of influence on the shoegaze scene, and it's something that you don't see here in Chile usually. They go on a more traditional route. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
that Latin
Yeah.
American music doesn't take shoegaze influence because you had Gustavo Cerati and Soda Stereo who clearly did. So
yeah,
it's interesting
in
to see
Dynamo.
something like this in this side of the pond.
Yeah, and this side of the jungle, as some would say. But yeah, we have a nice Chilean shoegazy, Britpoppy, alternative rockish album, you could say.
Yeah, the next one. This is my selection, and I choose to pick Jane's Addiction's Nothing Shocking. Um, yeah, nothing going on behind the caution warning signs. I decided to apply to TOS for both Twitch and YouTube. Nice city, by the way. I'm gonna steal that shit from you, my boy. Um,
Thank you.
so, what is the deal with this? What's the deal with Jane's Addictions? Nothing shocking. Why did I choose to include this album in particular? Nothing Shocking is not exactly an underrated album or an album that no one notices. When this released in 1988, this was the absolute bomb. It placed Jane's Addiction on the map. It was kind of like the the starting point for a lot of the alternative rock from the 90s. It influenced a lot of music. It was sampled by Nine Inch Nails, so that's a huge credit. But yeah, Jane's Addiction, what's the deal with this album? This album is well known, this album is popular, so why am I saying that it's kind of being forgotten? Well, first of all, its influence. Its influence is kind of being forgotten. Nobody really brings this album, brings this band, especially when it was in everybody's mouth in the 90s, in the early 2000s. Now, at this time and age, it just kind of goes above everybody else. Um, so its influence is kind of dying. Its relevance is kind of dying. And it's even dying even more now that sadly Jane's Addiction is facing the awful results of the last concert that they had. You know, with Perry Farrell trying to punch Dave Navarro from out of nowhere. James was always a very volatile band. It comes and goes with this. Even the recording of this album was very conflictive because, from what I understand, Perry Farrell wanted to get most of the royalties and credits for the album, leaving the rest of the band behind. So, yeah, I'm surprised that this album fell off the way it did. Not surprised that the band fell off the way it did, but especially this album. I think this album deserves a little bit more of recognition, and it just kind of died, kind of very quickly, and nobody brings this up anymore, especially for being so influential. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, this album, well, it's weird because to me this album was part of my childhood. As you can see, I have the CD. So I think I in my opinion it's not underrated or anything, but yeah, I can sense that willingness to forget about the album, you could say, that people tend to underestimate the value of this album because it's very 1988 in the sense of the alternative it has on it. You know, it feels like an album from the late 80s that doesn't sound new wave. It has that vibe, and that vibe is being forgotten at the current times because the current 80s that we're bringing back is more of the new wavy 80s instead of this alternative rockish one.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely, the sound that we're bringing up from the 80s is definitely not this one. Well, this one came out in a period of transition, you know. It's going
Yeah.
much more on a heavy route, very intense on the riffs. But, well, as I said, it's kind of surprising that this album is falling down, to me at least, because it is an influential record, you know. Its influence it's in a lot of the early 90s, I mean, all of the 90s and early 2000s. And then we just collectively decided that this was no longer important. No longer in everybody's charts, no longer anybody's favorites. Even
Yeah, and think
Ritual de
about
la
it
Habitual, the
because
second
this
album by
album
this
and
band, is usually taking more of the spotlight for some of the James Addiction fans. Well, taste is something personal, but I think this one is much more relevant. People just acknowledge that. But well, it is what it is.
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing about it. Like the I was just thinking the same thing, you know. Like
Hmm.
Edad del Habitual is more popular at this point, and people are not taking the influence of this album or the singles that it brings. You know, like Jane says, it's a great album track. So yeah,
That will be it for this one in particular. So how about we move on to the next one?
let's
You have
go.
chosen
Yeah, the most underground dance album of all time. Yeah, of the most underground band of ever.
that. This is one. This is an interesting one. But I want to listen to you first before I add on my comments. Daft Punk. You know, you're bringing up a big name.
Yeah, I'm bringing a big name because, due to the current landscape of things, Discovery is the greatest Daft Punk record. And Random Access Memories is overtaking the influence of Discovery, in my opinion, like of the relevance of the band. So, in my view, Discovery is being forgotten. Like the whole pre Discovery days, aside from Around the World and Daft Punk, are being forgotten. People just don't listen to this album anymore. They don't talk about it. They barely mention it. It's surprising because even Humans After All had a bit of a buzz. This doesn't at all.
Personally, I think that what happens with Discovery is that it suffers from being a debut. What came after, it's clearly a much more polished sound. This is if you ask me. So albums like the one that came after this one are clearly have clearly improved. You know, the sound from the predecessor. So Discovery suffers from being, you know, the first album. The band trying to figure out what kind of sound they wanted to make. They clearly had no hits at this point. They clearly had, except for Around the World. But yeah, this album, I think it suffers from that. However, when you talk about Daft Punk, when you talk about such a big name in the industry, such a stronghold in what is electronic music, it's very difficult to say that this is fully forgotten, I would say. I think you don't bring this
Fair.
one up as much as the other ones. But I see what your point. I see your point. Discovery definitely is kind of going under the blanket. It's suffering a little bit of what is Radiohead, you know, with
Yeah, with
Pablo
the
Honey.
band, you know.
Yeah, with Pablo Honey and the bands, people are kind of forgetting that Pablo Honey exists. They choose to discourage that album and bring the bands as the groundbreaking debut. Not exactly the case with that with Discovery, however. But yeah, I kind of get your point, but I will disagree, but only slightly, only slightly. I think the band is so big that the entire discography is it can be recognized, and it's not about record, by the way. It's got a lot of
No, it's
it's a good continuous record. It doesn't have, you know, like too many hits consecutive, but it's still a solid record in general. You know, if you listen to it in one
yeah.
go.
Yeah, it's a nice record to drive, you know? It's one of those records that fit in the I drive category.
Yeah, yeah. I will say that with this. As I say, this band is so big that when you bring up like the most unknown album, it's still something that is gonna live rent free in people's minds. That at least that's my opinion.
Yeah, it could be so bad. I think it's that the follow-up album, um, that album with Stronger, Faster, whatever, that song, Something About Us or One More Time is more popular and more relevant to the current era of music, you know? Yeah, I would love
So
to live in a world where this record was the main Daft Punk record and not that other one. It would be a really weird world because we have the weekend influence by this, you know?
maybe it deserves a little bit more love. I will say you. I see you on that point. Maybe it goes too much under the radar.
Now it's your turn, Alex.
O- Okay, yeah. What was my pick here? Give me a second. Fixing some little tech issues. From me, oh yes, this is a special album. This is the project called Lovage, and the album is called Music to Make Love to Your Old Lady Bar, bring up by Nathaniel Merriweather with the voices of Mike Patton and Jennifer Charles. Yeah, this is a little bit long. However, why do
Yeah.
I bring this up? Mike Patton, everybody loves Mike Patton. Everybody knows Mike Patton, Mr. Faith No More, and Mr. I Have a Million Project and a million of bands. This one is usually the one that goes under the table, or maybe people don't stumble upon this anymore. So a little bit of general context. First of all, who the fuck is Nathaniel Merriweather? Do you know who the fuck Nathaniel Merriweather is?
Oh no, I know. I don't.
Of course you don't. But do you know about Dan the Automator?
Yes, I know who Dan the Automator is.
Okay, so basically this is a project by him and Mike Patton and Jennifer Charles. They brought up together, and this is like a fictional character. In fact, this is Dan in the photo, wearing a mustache and a suit. And for people who don't know who Dan the Automator is, I'm not going to go fully explain it, but I'm going to just randomly say some names, like the debut from Gorillaz, also participating in Demon Days, and just by saying Delton 3030. There, the rest you can
Ooh.
Google it. So this is a big name. This is a big, really good producer. This is a rap hip hop producer who's also uh, bring up a little bit of rock elements to the instrumentation. This album obviously has that, and it's a really fun album. It's a really enjoyable ride. It's very cartoony, if I would have to describe it in some way. It's about an instruction manual to have uh, romantic affairs, to put it lightly. And they bring it up in such a comedic and cartoonish way that, well, that's where the enjoyment of this album comes. It's got really good songs. It's around hour and a 15. It's kind of a long album, but it's very enjoyable from the same way that it was the early trip hop era. It's very trip hoppy with this crazy concept, with these wacky characters, with the vocal performance from two excellent singers. They kind of
Mhm.
going, in a soft and singing in this manner, and then they go really heavy and aggressive. And then I'm not going to fully describe when they start getting too much into character and they start or things like that. But yeah, I think this album, it's really good. It's really fun. It's very comedic. And if you want to listen to more than the Automator and more of Mike Patton, this is a must go. And this is being forgotten because nobody really brings this up. Nobody really comes and speaks about this album. It just goes under the radar of everybody. And personally, I discovered this album thanks to Spotify recommendations. Otherwise, I wouldn't know
Oh,
this
really?
exists. Yeah, from listening to Faith No More and from listening to Tomahawk, this popped up, and then I started reading, and then I saw that Mike Patton was there. Otherwise, I would just totally skip it.
Yeah, this is a great record. It's like you said, a trip hop influence album. I really enjoyed it back in the day when I listened to it because to me this is not an unknown record, but that's because I'm a Mike Patton fan. And if you are a Mike Patton fan, you have listened to at least 10 of
Hmm.
these of his projects, and this was one of them for me. And it's a great record to put on and just relax. Put music to chill beats by Mike Patton to relax to, basically.
Yeah, it's definitely like I say, it's very trip hoppy, in a very traditional way. This entire album is just really enjoyable. It's just really well produced and it's really fun. So that's why I think people should check it out. If you like Mike Patton and if you like Dan the Automator, this one is not a skip. You should totally come with it. I'm not going to, if I keep talking about it, I'm gonna be here forever. So how
Yeah,
about if we move on?
yeah, let's move on to
What's
yes.
next? What do you bring up? Oh boy, yes, this is one I like.
Yeah, this A Stormy Heaven by The Verb. The debut album from 1993 of the British slash English band The Verb. This is not the same Verb that we know from the Bittersweet Symphony, or The Sonnet, or Lucky Man. No, this is a shoegazy one.
Hmm.
This is an album that I hear no one bringing because of the urban hymns. If I remember correctly, that's the name of the album, which has all the hits. This is an
Urban
album
Hymns,
that,
that's right.
yeah, urban hymns. Thank you. This is an album that was released in 1993 and it didn't profit from anything, too many shoegaze, I guess. But this is a great record. It has songs like Star Sails, Slide Away, Already There. Virtual World is marvelous. And yeah, it's an album that not many people talk about, in my opinion. It's, in my opinion, the best Verb album ever. Like, yeah, I think it's better than any other release they made. And it shows because this album has that shoegaze vibe, but it has that like that how you say that, like it's the Prometheus of Britpop in my opinion. It has that vibe that Britpop has, but it doesn't show it. It's camouflaged by the shoegaze.
I will have to agree with that. That's a good description. Camouflage by the shoegaze. Trip hop camouflage by shoegaze. The early verb clearly was going on that direction, on that road. In fact, there's the EP that came before
Yeah.
this that I think it's subtitled just the Verve EP. It's got four
Yeah.
songs. One of them is what's the name of it? Because I absolutely love that song. Gravity Grave. Gravity Grave is such a
Oh,
good
Gravity
jam,
Grave is a
man.
great song. It's a great song.
Oh man, have you listened to the extended version of Gravity Grave?
No, I haven't. I only heard the version on the EP.
Gravity Grave is already a kind of a longish song. It's around 4.5 minutes or 5.5 minutes. I don't remember well. The extended version, the original version, is around 8 minutes, but well, it kind of just goes on the instrumentation. However, clearly has this, like I said, this shoegaze influence. The Verve was really into that. I love this album, the debut. I usually don't tend to forget about this album. I love the Verve. I love all of the studio albums. Maybe fourth is the weakest one because it's the one that where the band
Yeah.
reunited, and it was a good attempt, I would say.
It lost the momentum,
But
you know?
yeah, that's it. They try to be relevant once again. However, to go backwards on the discography, Urban Hymns, everybody remembers Urban Hymns for being the one with all the hits and all the pop radio songs. Then you had the one before that. What was the name of it? A
Oh,
Northern Soul. It was kind of the same way, very polished production. And then you have this. The production of this is not polished, but I think it's a benefit. It's a
yes.
positive aspect instead of a negative one. Yeah, it's very shoegazy, however, very trip hop. Doesn't go too crazy with the lyrics. It goes on everyday topics. It's got really good songs. One of them like Butterfly, like the beginning song as well.
Ooh, Butterfly
But
is
I
so good.
remember Butterfly in particular, one of my favorites. I love this album. I think that the debut is being underlooked. It's a little bit a case of what you bring up before, a little bit like Discovery. It suffers from being a debut and from the polished sound that came after that, because
Yeah.
people are
We
familiar
live
with
in
that.
a urban hymns world more than a stormy heaven world, you know?
Yeah, Urban Hymns was a disaster for the Verve under Sonic Evolution.
Yeah.
Urban Hymns is great. Urban Hymns is great. People will complain that it's too poppy and too radio catchy, but I think it's a great record. However, yes, this is an underlooked record on the Verve's discography. So
Thank you.
I'm totally with you on this one.
I love this record so much. It's a nice
Hmm.
listen, and everybody should.
Yeah, I love it
By
as
the
well.
way, all of these albums are on Spotify. If anybody's watching this, you can listen through there.
Yeah, that's true. It's not so forgotten. Unlike an album that I'm going to bring it up, but in a little later. Not the next one. The next one that we have here is a project from Chino Moreno, my beloved. The name of it is Team Sleep. People may not know about Team Sleep. In fact, I've known hardcore Deftones fans that didn't know that this project existed. And they should be punished and sent to hell for that. Because without this record, or without the idea of this record, we wouldn't have White Pony. And Deftones wouldn't sound the way it sounds today. Because the idea of Team Sleep was cooking on Chino Moreno's head after around the 4. So what's the deal with this? Team Sleep is a side project by Chino Moreno and other musicians, and it's much more electronic and kind of ambient and kind of drone at times, that released right after White Pony. But the idea, as I said, was cooking before. There were some singles that were being released and leaked on the internet. Songs like Natalie Portman, that's the first one I know because the name is easy. This album is like, it sounds like this one song from White Pony, like Teenager. In fact, Teenager was supposed to be a song for Team Sleep, not a Deftones song. So, like I said, everybody remembers White Pony, everybody loves White Pony, and everybody has reasons to love White Pony because it transitions and it blends so well, being heavy and being nu metal, but going into alternative metal. That would be thanks to this, in my opinion. Team Sleep is experimental. It takes a little bit of glam, it takes a little bit of goth, it takes a little bit of electronic, and it's a really good blend. Chino can deliver some really good singing here. I think the vocal style of Chino fits really well with this ethereal kind of sound, with this abstract idea. And like I said, people don't really know about this album. People totally, it goes above their heads, and that's crazy. I think people should recognize this. If you love Deftones, you need to like Team Sleep. I rest my case.
Yeah, it's a great record that it shows the evolution and the versatility of Chino Moreno. It's an album that we could see the most. I would say this is a controversial opinion. Some of his best vocal performances are on this album. Like if you
Mm.
think about it, to the versatility and not is getting stuck in the alternative metal stick. You know?
I have to fully agree. Some of the best vocal performance here. You're not gonna have him screaming. Let's set that clear. But
Oh yeah.
it's much more interesting. It's much more interesting. It's much more experimental. You have to check this out. If you like Deftones and you didn't know about this, shame on you. You know, I'm gonna blame this one on you, not me. And you're wasting time listening to me instead of listening to this absolutely fantastic record.
Yeah, Team Sleep, my beloved.
Okay, so let's go on. What do we have next? Oh, what the hell? We went back. Oh, yeah, that wasn't me. So we had Team Sleep, and now we have.
Oh, we have this. Okay, this is the
Please help me out.
hipster. Yeah, this is the hipster version of the podcast. This is the hipster edition. Okay, this is a forgotten album in a different sense. This is an album that was a massive hit in the 2000s, but only in Turkey and technically parts of Europe, but mainly Turkey. The band is called Mor ve Oseti, or Odesi. Sorry, I don't speak Turkish. The only words I know in Turkish are from the 1920s when my grandma told me. But yeah, this is an album that I don't see anyone who is not from Turkey speaking about it. I swear to God, I have never seen an English comment about this album that is not from a Turkish person. I have never seen a Spanish, German, Italian, whatever language about this album ever. Only Turkish. And it's a great record. They know how to do the stuff. The cover is kind of like the lay, as you said, Alex, you know?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it reminds me, well, for not English speakers, we have a local band, pop rock band called Lalei. It's a group of three people, and and in one of the albums they make this exact pose, and they have almost this
Yeah,
exact
I think it's called
clothing.
Uno, right?
Yeah,
El
that's the
Uno.
one, like the album Uno, but you slap the singer from Placebo, you know, Brian Molko while he's looking today with the mustache, and that's it. You have this album cover.
Yeah, this is a great record. I highly recommend it. It's forgotten. I would say it's forgotten for the international audiences. You know, it's more forgotten in that sense than in the sense of forgotten in Turkey. But I swear there's nobody from Turkey watching this and saying, "Oh my God, how can you say they're forgotten? They're like the biggest heroes of rock and Turkish and whatever." Like, no, I'm not saying they're bad or anything. I'm just saying that from outside of Turkey, it's a great record that can kind of gets overlooked by other countries, basically, other bands from other countries. You know, we have Phoenix from France or Manskin from Italy, but you don't hear music from Turkey. You know.
You know, I was going to ask you a question, but you already answered it. And that was the relevancy, because we're talking about forgotten albums. Either nobody remembers the influence, or nobody remembers the artist, or people were talking about the thing that was popular and no longer. Well, you already said it had an impact internationally, and then it just kind of faded away, except from Turkey. And well, you and I are clearly not Turkish, so we don't know if the album
Hey,
and the
talk about
band is being
yourself, buddy.
forgotten there. Ah, okay, okay. I retract myself. I retract my words. But so I was going to be a little bit of a nitpick asshole, and I was going to ask you, okay, but is it forgotten in Turkey? But yeah, you already
uh,
answer.
I tried. Yeah, look, buddy. I bought this record from Discogs. By the way. 2 days ago. You know how many listings they were?
No, no.
Four.
Oh, oh, oh.
That's not a lot.
That's forgotten. They're becoming
That's
lost
forgotten
media.
territory, and two of them were cassettes.
Oh my god, they're becoming lost media. We have to save them. We have to save this band. Is it on streaming platforms? This one?
Yeah, it's on streaming. It's on streaming, and one of the songs was highly replayed due to a Turkish, I think, Turkish series. One of those dramas.
Okay, sorry, I don't watch Turkish series. I don't want to disrespect the culture, but they like their theatricals kind of like a lot. They go heavy into that. Uh, just not my cup
Yeah,
of tea. Okay, not trying to offend anybody. So you already answered my question. Is it being really forgotten? Yeah. Well, I didn't check this one out because this was a last minute inclusion on this
yeah,
stream.
literally yesterday.
So I have it on my homework. The rest, I'm aware of every single one of the records that we're talking about. My next one, and this was an interesting from me, we have God Lives Underwater. Here's the album empty, but I will have to say that the entire catalog of God Lives Underwater. What's the deal with this band? You could say that these are literally who cares, because this one is an industrial band from the early 90s and during the 90s and the early 2000s. And we had a lot of those. You had a lot of these imitations from Nine Inch Nails that every single record label wanted to get. You had your Gravity Kills and your Stabbing Westwards. And this one was the pick from Rick Rubin. The story for God Lives Underwater is that Rick Rubin discovered this band and they signed it to American Records and they released around 3 records. There's one, well, there's an EP. There's this one that they debuted that's called Empty. We have Life in the so-called Space Age, and we have the last one, which I think it's called Up Off the Floor or something between the lines over there. This is a project by two main guys. One of them is called David Rayleigh, and the other one, Jeff Trusso. I think that was the name. I'm sorry if I forgot it. So why do I bring them up? I think this band was going to be very special. They had talent, especially with the singer, David Rayleigh. This guy was really heavy into electronic music, rock and the industrial scene that I'm talking to you about right now. However, it was much more heavy into electronic, much more typical beeps and boops. And I also make a parallel between bands, which is a little bit like a fan fiction, you could say. But this reminds me a lot. And tell me if you see the similarities with Alice in Chains.
Yeah, it has the same. It has that something metal about it, in a sense. It has that because Alice in Chains was grunge, but a little bit of metal. This is
Hmm.
something industrial with a little bit of metal.
Yeah, I think the similarities are there. This goes industrial, wanting to go more into metal and more into electronics. Also, David Riley it didn't have the vocal power that Lane Staley had, but they kind of have a very similar way to perform, and they also look kind of similar in a way. They have a very similar image. I believe in a alternative timeline where these two would have met eventually, and they will kind of wear. What's the name of the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers? Chad Smear.
Chad Smith.
Yeah, Chad Smith. I imagine an alternative timeline where here we have Chad Smear and Will Ferrell like being kind of doppelgangers of each other, and one has a T-shirt, "No, I'm not Chad Smear," and one that says, "No, I'm not Will Ferrell." I want to believe in a timeline where Lane Staley and this guy will have met each other and they will wear shirts like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I see the parallels with Alice in Chains for God Lives Underwater. Also, this group is being forgotten because one of the things there's no longer available on streaming services. One of the albums, which is the second and probably the best, the one that's called Life in the so-called Space Age. Also, this guy was very influential on the scene. I don't know if you are aware of a tribute record for Depeche Mode called For the Masses.
Yes, it has the Cure and Ramstein.
Correctly. That album, and the people who are participating in the album are organized by Mr. David Rayleigh himself.
Oh, me, wish. Look
Yeah,
at
he brought
that.
all of those guys together, and in fact, he made a cover. He is there. God Lives Underwater makes one cover. I don't remember which song, but yeah, these guys were going places. And what happened at the end is, like Lane Staley, David Riley died from an overdose. May he rest in peace.
Mm,
And God Lives Underwater has a very niche but very passionate community that is keeping it alive. It's still at risk of becoming lost media, but it's there. It's holding on. And I want to be one of those people who are keeping the legacy of David Riley alive. So I want to give it the shout out. I hope people who are into industrial music will check them out and not let it die.
yeah. I did listen to a little bit of this album, but I didn't fully committed to it because I literally listened to this album while I was commuting to work, and that's only 22 minutes. So I didn't listen to much of it. Honestly, I listened to probably the first half more than the second half. But it's a great industrial record. It's a good album to be angry to.
Even like I say, this one is not even the best work. I think the second one is much better. The third one suffers from having an awful production, but the band was going places. So it's a shame that it just ended. But well, we live in this timeline, not the timeline of in my imagination. And well, that would be it with this
Mm,
one in particular. So, shall we move on?
let's move on.
Yeah. What
Oh
do we have
yeah, quick side
next?
note. Quick side
Huh?
note. Death Grips has just disbanded. Disbanded. I repeat, Death Grips has just disbanded officially.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's something to check out.
yeah. That might be our next episode idea, maybe.
Yeah. I like where this is going. I like where this is going.
Yeah, a friend of mine just told me like,
Bro, Netflix just separated officially, bro. And I was like, bro, what?
Well, let's see if this one this one stays like this. I don't know. This is
yeah,
breaking news. Breaking news. But
breaking news.
well, Death Grips is a band that goes on with this type of shenanigans. I guess. Wow, this is shockers.
Yeah, it's just bonkers. Yeah. Anyway, Sunny Day Real Estate LP2. Basically self-titled, but the second LP. This is the second LP from Sunny Day Real Estate. The basically that this is the band where the bassist and the first drummer from Foo Fighters came from. Basically, they are emo, post-hardcore, but more Midwest emo than anything else. And this album, even though it's not their best, in my opinion, their best is their debut, and the third album is better than this one. This one is clearly forgotten because it's many sites. It's barely touched upon in this in documentaries and stuff like that. It's unknown. It's a great album that I highly recommend, but a lot of people don't talk about it. Most people talk about Diary, which is their debut, and for good reason. It's the best album, but I would also talk about this one.
Yeah, I was listening to this, preparing for this stream. I'm going to be honest. I like emo music. I appreciate it, but I'm not too drawn into it. It's not something that I usually repeat. And with Sunny Day Real Estate, I'm like the classical meme that says, you listen it to this one record once and you say you loved it and never listen to it again.
Again.
I'm guilty of that one. But yeah, Sunny Day Real Estate is a really good band. The debut is just too iconic to skip it. And listening to this one, I can see some differences. They were trying to go from keeping staying emo, but going a little bit on a alternative rock path, and they were kind of
Yeah.
experimenting a little bit with their sound, and probably that didn't like too much to the fans. Personally, I think it's great. But once again, this is for someone who doesn't consume emo too heavily and prefers their alternative rocks. So it kind of suits my fancy. There's one of the songs that I really like about this album, which is 8.
Good
That
song.
song is really alternative. It's really drifts from emo. It's emo on the lyrics, but not so emo on the instrumentation. So I will say that the album may, as I say again, may doesn't tickle the fancy of the hardcore fans, but if you want to listen to something different, it's there, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I would also add that the production is much rougher. It's more Theo Balvini influenced than their debut album, which was more polished.
Well, like I said, I respect emo. It's a music genre that I like to listen to, but I need to be reminded that this music genre exists. Then I
Yeah,
go like an entire day listening to emo albums, and then the next day I just go back to my classical sound. But that's I'm the one who's guilty for that, not the music genre.
yeah. It
But yeah,
it feels like you are afraid of emo.
I'm sorry. I feel like I have to apologize to the public audience, but I like this. I like the music genre. I like the band. One of my favorite emo bands is Citizen. I think it's one of the most interesting bands in the game right now. I would like to have a chance where we speak about it in at some point because I
Yeah,
love
and
the discography and the progression that discography had.
yeah, I agree. For the next episode, it will be a fun little chat.
Okay, so next one. What do we have? Next one, I take it. If I remember well, we have Mick
Yes,
Jenkins
sure.
with The Waters. Speaking of, because it's hella hot. So what's the deal with The Waters? What's the deal with Mick Jenkins? This is an album that I've been listening over and over, preparing for the stream, trying to set my mind, remembering this album and saying maybe I'm being too harsh with it. And after giving it a really repeated listen and going a little bit on Mick Jenkins' discography, I say nope, my opinion stays the same. So first of all, who the hell is Mick Jenkins? Because it's not just this mixtape, technically, it's also Mick Jenkins himself. Mick Jenkins is a rapper, a very introspective one. You don't expect from Mick Jenkins, throwing like radio hits or being, like super trendy, like, I don't know, Kendrick Lamar, Drake, Tyler the Creator. Mostly because this is a very introspective guy. This is more of a lyricist more than a rapper himself or a producer himself. Um, the Waters, however, is a very interesting project because it's the groundbreaking mixtape. It released in 2014, and when it released, everybody was keeping an eye on him. He was being very promising because, well, the production on this was very catchy as well, being that type of record. And so I think people were making expectation for what Mick was going to release after. He has like already 4 or 5 albums in his discography, and people didn't talk about him anymore after The Waters. Just recently, with The Patience, the album that was released the last year, Mick Jenkins released an album, and was getting the attention of the people again. I listened to it, and I still don't hook too much compared with this project. I think this one is much more better produced. I think Mick, while being this chill introspective lyricist, it keeps him trapped on a niche. That's what I would have to say. This is a great singer. He's a great rapper, but he himself is keeping himself stuck in the place where he is right now. It's a bit of a shame, but this is the path that he chooses. So I like to go back to this album, but the rest of his discography, while not exactly bad, it doesn't really reach the same heights, and he's just gonna stay below if he doesn't change his ways. Also, well, as the title says, this record revolves around water. Drinking water, stay hydrated. How water is like the source of life. It goes from simple things to very deep meditative topics. this is a very interesting artist that just uh, it holds still and it was trapped on a niche by himself and never move on. It's crazy.
Yeah, I never heard of this rapper before you mentioned it for this video. I check him out, and it's a really solid lyricist, you could say. It's like it's influenced by that Kendrick way of saying I'm a lyricist more than a rapper, but like Leonard Cohen, who is more of a lyricist more than a singer-songwriter, more of a songwriter than a singer-songwriter. It feels the same way because his music is good, but he clearly knows what is writing about.
Yeah, you nailed it there. You know, he clearly knows what he wants to say and doesn't go beyond that line. However, I think that can be a little bit of damaging because this is a guy who's got talent, and it's a bit of a shame that we are here in this situation. Well, that will be for Mick Jenkins, the water. Uh, Give me a few seconds. I had a little bit of a freeze on my camera. There we go. But yeah, with Mick Jenkins, I'm a little sad that he is where he's at, but he seems comfortable, you know, making his stuff. Nobody tells him what to do or how to do it. And who am I to tell him that he needs to change? I just still have a lot of value for the Waters, and so does the public opinion. You know, the Waters is his most popular project to this day, and the rest of his discography is just going under the table.
Let's move along to the last few records.
Yeah, we have two more, and going on rap, you decided to choose to talk about Kendrick Lamar with Section 80.
Okay. Yeah, Kendrick Lamar Unforgotten. Yeah, right. Who am I, Drake? Yeah,
Um,
it's easy to say that Kendrick will be forgotten. No, he won't. But I would say the influence on Section 80 was completely erased when Good Kid, Mad City came out, and when the nail on the coffin was basically To Pimp a Butterfly. Both of them excellent records. To me, two of them are on the top five rap records of all time, in my opinion. But Kendrick Lamar Section 80, well, it hasn't aged in a way that I thought it would be when it was first released. I thought it was gonna be this new wave of rap is gonna be influenced by this album, and it wasn't. It was more influenced by rappers like Chief Keef or Playboy Cardi or whatever, but not like this album. It had hits after hits like HDHD and High Power. It just surprised me that this album is not as well even well known at this point. People don't know that this was Kendrick's first album after that mixtape he released. It's weird to think that people really think that Good Kid, Mad City is his debut when it's clearly not.
well, like I said before, I think with Section 80 is a little bit of a Radiohead case. People are just acknowledging it. You know, Good Kid, Mad City was so big, was so popular, was so influential that this one just went under the table. Just like Pablo Honey. In fact, there is a funny video on YouTube that makes the parallels between Kendrick Lamar's discography and Radiohead discography.
Oh
It's a
god.
little just a silly video. However, it's fun, but it suffers from that. You know, Radiohead made Pablo Honey. It was good for what was released at that point. You know, being heavily influenced by the grunge scene and the alternative rock scene, but then you have the Benz, and the Benz is the sound of Radiohead. With K Dot, it's a little bit like, yeah, Section 80 was released, and it was good for the time, and it was good for what it was, and then you had Good Kid, Mad City, and it went. That's where the bar was set for Kendrick, and it went on that
Yeah.
direction. However, I wouldn't say that this is completely forgotten. First of all, this is not a bad record. It's really good. It's very enjoyable. Keeping
Yeah.
your expectations right, I think you can find a lot of to like for this one. But yeah, I would have to say that it's that, and I wouldn't agree completely that this album is being forgotten because, in my opinion, my humble opinion, Section 80 is still being brought up from time to time. In fact, if I make the comparison with Radiohead once again, I would say that Section 80 is being brought up much more often than what it is with Pablo Honey. So the
Yeah, but
advantage is
Pablo
that
Honey
this one doesn't
sucks.
drift away from what Kendrick has released to this day. Not so much.
Yeah, but in my opinion, I think discussion is first of all, discussions are great. In my opinion, this album is forgotten in a sense that I think people do not acknowledge this album as much as they should be because hey, Kendrick is the hottest rapper right now. He was doing the halftime show on the Super Bowl. He's not
True.
gonna perform any songs from Section 80. That's what I mean.
True. I see your point and I'm like half agreeing with you to this point. Okay, to end this, because originally we were going to go with 5 albums each, and then you brought up this one, and I was thinking, what do I bring next? I thought I was very satisfied with my 5 picks, but then I said, yeah, you know what? I have something else to talk about. Faith No More, We Care a Lot. The first album by Faith No More. What's the deal with this? Well, Faith No More, everybody knows them for Mike Patton and that lineout. You know, from the album, what's the name?
The
The
real
Real
thing.
Thing and Ahead. Yes, but everybody forgets about We Care a Lot and Introduce Yourself. And I see the point, you know, this album didn't have Mike Patton. It was Chuck Mosley, or however you say it. I'm so sorry. But yeah, Chuck was on the vocals. However, while Faith No More changed a lot with the new singer, it still had this crazy identity. I think that the first 2 albums are still very Faith No More like, you know? It's not like the band absolutely mutated with the inclusion of Mike Patton on the vocals. It just went on a slightly better direction. It's like the improved version of what it would have been if Chuck was still in the band. No disrespect for Chuck, but
Yeah.
I think this album is still a little bit underlooked. I think that people are still forgetting way too heavily on the first 2 albums by Faith No More because they're still very Faith No More. If you listen to them, the lyrics are very on point. You know, you have hits, you have bangers like the title album, the opening. We Care a Lot. You have this mixing with rap and rock and heavy metal that later influenced the new metal scene. It's still very Faith No More. It's like people discourage it like this is not part of the discography, but I cannot disagree. It's not one of my favorite albums, you know. Clearly, this is, you could say that this is a little bit of a case of Pablo Honey once again. I brought this up so many
Yeah.
times, but
Yeah, you're a
it
Pablo
suffers
Honey
from being a
apologist.
debut. And this is very interesting because it suffers from a different singer. But I think it doesn't go derail too much for what Faith No More is supposed to be. That's what I have to say about the first 2 albums.
Well, if you clearly said, Fade No More, this this feels like a different band, but it's the same band at the same time. It feels like a different. It feels like an alternative version of Fade No More, if you could say so, because it has the
Mm.
same vibe, but it just feels different. Not in a bad sense, but but people tend to forget about this by the exception of We Care a Lot, the main song, the self-titled song, which is being played even by my pattern at these days.
Yeah, you said it right. It's like listening to a bunch of B-sides. I would have to say.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not exactly bad. It's like discovering a different face for the same band that you like and the same songs that you are used to listen to. I think We Care a Lot deserves a little bit more credit, both in We Care a Lot and Introduce Yourself. I don't know. That would be for what I have to say. I think this is a little bit of uh, underwhelmingly being shadow banned for the fandom. But
Yeah, it's like for the pedantic people, it's not a Fate No More record, and I would say, no, screw them. It's a Fate No More record. It's a different one, but it's a Fate No More record at this end of the day.
so I think it doesn't deserve to be forgotten. That's why I decided to include this one. With that, I think we're kind of done here. And
Yes,
just
we're
in time because my
done.
camera died.
Ooh, it's just A coincidence, a happy little coincidence.
We were on point. We were on point. But give me a second. I'm gonna be back again. But yeah,
Ooh,
to not
shiny
lose
colors.
momentum, as I become a rainbow, and to not lose momentum, as I said, this was it. This was the forgotten albums. I think these are things that we don't need to just discourage. We were talking about unknown bands and very well known bands and artists. Uh, Hold on, this is very distracting. There we go. And I think they deserve a second chance. I think people really had to listen, give these ones another listen. I think they need to be maybe rediscovered.
I would say that, yeah, maybe these albums are well known in a sense, but it's never a bad time to re-listen music, you know? Like, you can always make new memories with albums that you tend to not listen to. That's
Hmm.
what happened with me with Fate No More. That was the first Fate No More album I listened to, which is,
Oh.
surprising because it's not the best Fate No More record.
But yeah, I think maybe this one can become a little bit of a series. You know, maybe we can bring this topic once again. There are so many bands that are slowly becoming lost media or being underappreciated, or so many albums that maybe this doesn't have to die here. Maybe we can bring this one up and so on. We can bring it up on another episode. But for this
Mm,
one, I think it's better to call it out here. We're going to
yes.
cook more ideas. We hope to bring up more content. We hope to edit this bot, upload it on YouTube with a little bit of more editing, so
Movie
it
magic.
can be a little bit more appreciated. So with this, should we say goodbye, my boy?
Yeah, say goodbye, my fella.
I would like to thank everybody who stumbled with our content. As always, we hope to grow a little bit of an audience slowly. We are having our hopes higher and higher. I think that the expansion that we're going to have with the social media like Instagram and Twitter is gonna possibly bring a little bit more of a few viewers. So
Mm,
for now, we're having fun being content creators, figuring out how to do this shit. We hope
yeah.
to improve the quality more and more. And with that one, I have nothing more to say. But see you the next time.
See ya. Goodbye.
Bye bye.